Hello, and welcome back to another episode of PlantCare.club, where we care about your plants. My name is Fred. I have about 6 years in the horticultural space. I grew up on a greenhouse farm where we grow plants, everything from spring annuals, garden mums, poinsettias, and now we have a small facility in a small nursery in Homestead, Florida, where we grow indoor plants, palms, Kimberly Queen ferns. We'll do some mandevilla and items that you might have around your home. So, what we try to do on this show is talk about how different practices are implemented at commercial growing spaces, at either greenhouses or nurseries, how your houseplant is grown, and how you can apply those same practices to your own home. So, we say we like to do three things. Number one, we talk about your plants, indoor and outdoor, whatever you've got. Number two, we do product reviews. So we'll go in depth on a new type of soil or pots that are out and new types of plants that may have just hit the market. If you want something in depth on a new variety that you see out there, we can go in depth on them as well. And number three, we answer your questions. So if you have any questions that come up after listening to the show, head over to plantcare.club. We've got lots of information, lots of blogs and resources on that website, but also you can fill out your question on the site. We will either reply via email or we will answer it on a show following. So today I want to talk about soil, and specifically on soil, we have to first get into the background information on where does the soil come from and how does it actually get to that bag in order to kind of understand what soil to pick for your house, for your garden, for your indoor pots, whatever it is. So right here I have a map of Canada and the United States. If you are watching, you can see it. If you're listening, I will try to describe it. It's the United States, Canada, and a whole bunch of dots all over it. Now this is from SunGrow. SunGrow is a soil company. I'm not sponsored, not affiliated with them in any way, but we have used some of their products at the greenhouse in the past. So I thought that their information was relatively easy to find and to use, and it gives you a good idea of what they're doing. So each one of these dots, a lot of them are along the eastern seaboard. There's a few in the middle of Canada and the US, and then there's a few on the western seaboard as well. But the dots represent either a distribution center where soil lands, it gets thrown out of different trucks and then sent out, or where there is a production facility where they're actually making some of the soil, or they're harvesting soil, or they're putting it together, whatever they're doing there. So all of these dots, it gives you an idea of where it's coming from and why. Now, what is actually in that soil though? Let's see. Oh, this is how the soil is harvested. So when we say we're harvesting soil, it isn't exactly, it's not exactly what is happening. The harvesting is happening from a peat moss that's on the ground. So they'll suck up the peat moss with these big machines that you see here. Now, if you're listening, the machine is like a very, very big vacuum that's being dragged behind a tractor. Now the vacuum's sitting right on the top level of the soil and it's sucking things up as it's moving along. So we will get into exactly what is in that soil mix that you're buying from the store, but peat moss is one of the main components of that soil mix. This is the machine that they use. The first time I saw it, I was blown away with it. I had no idea this is how they were doing it. And I think it's important to see this because it gives you more of an appreciation that it's not just dirt that they're grabbing from somewhere and that you're throwing into your garden. There's a little bit more science and some more that's going into the making of the soil that you buy at the store. Okay, so what you see here are bags of soil. Very simply, this is probably what you buy from the store, either a really 3.8 cubic feet bag or some of the smaller ones. You'll buy a few of them off of a pallet sitting in front of a retail chain or at a garden center, and you get home and there's some soil there. Now, what's happening on the other side? How about for a nursery that in some of the southern states? Well, there, the soil is loaded into dump trucks and the dump trucks will actually come to your facility, dump out the soil onto the ground, and that soil is then used to thrown into potting machines, and pots are filled up. Away you go from there for the next stage, which is planting. At most greenhouses, the soil shows up on pallets that are that have a big plastic bag on it. So think of like a regular size pallet, and then there's a big bag on it that's probably about 8 feet tall, 7 or 8 feet tall, and that bag has all soil inside of it that's really densely compressed. So from there, it gets put into a machine that will take the plastic off and take that soil and really beat it up to add some more air and make that soil fluffier, lighter. Now, once the air or decompress, as I said, it's all compressed inside that bag, so they want to decompress the soil. Now, once it's decompressed, then it goes into a machine, into the right pots, and is ready to go for planting. This is a potting machine that I have here. If you Google it, you can see a lot of different examples of potting machines. So this is just an easy example that I've got. Okay, so what is actually in the soil that you either see at the store or that comes to the greenhouse? Number one is sphagnum peat moss. Now, what is sphagnum peat moss? It is for growing media. Sphagnum peat moss for growing media comes from non-living fibrous sphagnum moss that is partially decomposed in a bog. It is light, spongy, and crumbles into small crumbs. So sphagnum peat moss is what is being sucked up by those big vacuum machines that we saw earlier. And the value of sphagnum or peat moss in general is it can hold on to water really well, and it holds on to nutrients well. So when you add that into your mix, it'll hold on to the water, hold on to nutrients. Another one, bark. Bark is added in, and it can be used for the organic matter, which brings nutrients. It can also be used as a way to add more air to the mix. So if you've got some more bark chunks in there, there's a little bit more air that can fit inside of your soil mix, which will allow for those roots to breathe a little bit better. Perlite. Perlite is derived from crushed volcanic rock, which is expanded or popped in a furnace. Perlite particles are lightweight, roundish, and white. So perlite, if you're looking at a bag of a bag of soil, and you've got some little white dots that are all over in there, that's usually perlite. Now the perlite is just similar to bark because it will allow for more air to enter into the soil. It allows it to be a little bit more fluffy, and it gives the roots more space to grow, to breathe, to keep moving. Now, on the next slide, I have some more items. There's core, compost, resilience, which is specific to sun-grow, I think, and earthworm castings. These are less important materials or matters that you're going to find inside of the soil mix, but it's important to note that they are here. I'm not going to go over all of them because I think that they're a little bit less important. Okay, now, how do you actually apply this to your home? So I've got a garden on the left here and some outdoor pots on the right. For your garden and for your outdoor pots, I'd suggest you can use some heavier soil mixes. You can use something on the full spectrum. You're going to have propagation mix, which has the most air, is the most lightweight, is the fluffiest. That's on one end of the spectrum. Because you need that for brand new plants that are just trying to grow and shoot roots. You need to have that propagation mix. On the other end, you're going to have perlite-free soil. So perlite-free is dense, heavy, and perfect for the middle of the summer. For mature plants. If you have a mature plant in the middle of the summer and you live in a hot area, using perlite-free soil is going to mean you have to water the pot a little bit less. If you have very, very lightweight soil that allows the water to drain out, in the summer, you might have to water some of your annuals 2 times a day even. Because the sun comes down, it gets so hot, the soil can only hold so much moisture, and eventually, midway through the day, it starts to give up, and a lot of the water's gone, and now the plants are starting to droop. If you're running into that problem, try some heavier soil like perlite-free soil. Now, I'm suggesting that you can do that for some of your garden and for some of your outdoor pots, but there are a ton of different caveats here. So it's not like you can just blanket this idea over everything. For your garden, is your garden close to the house and it doesn't flood? Then okay, you might be able to use more perlite free. Or is it in a lower area? Do you have more? Is the water table higher? Can you get some pooling water in that area? How easy is it for the water to drain? That's another question for you to ask. Maybe you need some more light fertilizer that allows water to drain. What about the nutrients? Do you have a lot of nutrients in your soil? Do you need to have something that bring in soil that has more of those nutrients, or can you get that from the ground, get that from fertilizer, get it from something else? So there are a few other things you have to think about, but in general, if you're looking for some soil for either of these use cases, I'd suggest check out perlite free or low perlite. Succulents and indoor houseplants, as well as cactus. I want to add in cactus here. They can use some more airy soil. They need to be able to breathe. And why? Because think about in the middle of the winter. In the middle of the winter, you probably aren't watering your plants as often because it's colder. They're not trying to grow. The days are shorter. They're getting a little bit less light. The plants are really just in static mode. Now, if they have very heavy soil and you're watering that heavy soil and the water is just sitting there, it's sitting in a pool and it's getting, as I said, heavy around the roots aren't able to breathe, that's when you either get root rot or you start to get some fungus, bacteria, fungus gnats, bugs are attracted to it, not good things. In the middle of the winter, you want that water to be able to drain and allow for the soil to dry out a little bit. That will keep the bacteria, the fungus, away from the plants. Another item that you want to think about is if you want to propagate something. If you want to propagate, look for propagation mix. It is light, fluffy, as I mentioned earlier, and it allows the roots to breathe very easily. Once the roots have shot through and you have roots in that ball, let's say you propagate it into a 4-inch or a 2.5-inch pot or whatever. Once you have roots all the way through that pot, you can then up pot it and add in some heavier soil there because that's going to hold on to more nutrients, hold on to more water. You don't have to water it as often. You don't have to babysit it as much. So from there, that's just about all that I've got on soil. If you have any questions that have come up, if you have something specific you want answered, head over to plantcare.club. We can probably help you out there. Fill out the question forum, and we can get back to you either over email or we'll answer it on the following show. There's tons of other resources there too. If you have questions if you're listening to this and thought, oh, well, what about the fertilizer that I should use? You mentioned that. We've got something on fertilizer.